Time, that great mystery surrounding us, the invisible current that seems to carry us relentlessly toward the inevitable. Many believe it to be a tyrant master, ruling our existence with chains of the past and uncertain promises of the future. But what if time were not an enemy? What if deep within your mind there existed a key to master it, to transform it, to turn it into an infinite ally? This text is that key. Inspired by the teachings of the great master Joseph Murphy, here you will discover that the past is not a sentence, but a seed you can replant. And the future is not chance, but a fertile garden awaiting the seeds of your thoughts, your beliefs, and your inner faith. In your hands lies the power to recreate your story and to sow your destiny. Each word will remind you that you are greater than the memories that bind you, and more powerful than the fears that project you forward. For the secret is not in escaping time, but in realizing that it has always been within you, waiting to be mastered. Prepare yourself for a journey that is profound, transformative, and luminous, because the moment has come to uncover the eternal truth. The past can be redeemed, the future can be created, and all of time rests in your hands. Time, for most people, is perceived as a relentless current flowing from past to future, carrying us along with no option to stop or alter its course. Yet from the perspective of the directed mind, time is not a chain that imprisons, but a malleable dimension that responds to the conscious orientation of thought. It is not the clock that governs your life, but the images and emotions stored in the reservoir of your subconscious. The past is not a fixed set of dead facts, but a series of living scenes that remain active within you. We do not suffer because of what happened, but because of the emotional interpretation we continue to nurture. Every memory you hold with pain keeps casting its shadow over your present. But when you learn to work with scientific prayer and mental revision, you can transform those scenes, softening their edges and giving them new meaning. I've seen men and women erase the bitterness of old experiences and replace it with understanding and peace, as if they had rewritten history within themselves. In the same way, the future is not out there ahead, waiting to surprise you. It is latent in your mind in the form of mental seeds that you plant today with your thought, your word, and your emotion. What you imagine repeatedly with faith, what you hold in your heart as a certain possibility, will sprout and manifest when the soil of circumstances is ready. A desire planted with clarity and gratitude becomes a mold that life fills with the necessary materials to make it visible. This truth is fully understood when you recognize that God is the eternal presence. In the divine mind, yesterday, today, and tomorrow are not separate compartments, but a single present where all life occurs simultaneously. Being the image and likeness of that mind, you share in the same power. You can intervene in the past by redeeming images, and in the future by planting the ones you wish to live. This book will show you how to work with both ends of the timeline without losing the anchor of the present moment. You will learn that your story is not dictated by what happened, nor your destiny by what could happen, but by what you choose to plant and sustain in your heart now. Because ultimately, true time is not measured in hours or years, but in the quality and direction of your thought. Time is in your heart, and from there you can transform everything. Time in your hands, based on the teachings of Joseph Murphy. We have noticed that more than 80% of visitors to our channel are not subscribed. You can support this project by pressing the subscribe button and giving a like to the video. Thank you for inspiring us to keep creating more and better content for you. Are you ready to transform your life? Chapter 1. The past lives in images. The past, as most people conceive of it, is a closed and immutable archive, a chain of fixed events that drags itself into the present. Yet this is not accurate from the standpoint of mental law. What you call the past is nothing more than a collection of living images stored on the screen of your subconscious mind, each one impregnated with a specific emotional charge. You do not suffer because of what objectively happened, but because of the emotional impression you kept inside when you lived it. Just as a movie projected in a theater can be replayed indefinitely as long as the reel remains intact, so too can your subconscious repeatedly project the painful scenes you have not redeemed. And these projections, far from remaining as mere memories, shape your behavior, your decisions, and even your physical health. The subconscious does not operate in terms of yesterday or 10 years ago. For it, everything is now. When you relive a memory charged with anger or humiliation, your deeper mind does not recognize that it is over. It reacts as if it were happening again in this very moment, releasing the same chemicals, accelerating your heartbeat, contracting your muscles, and triggering the same reactions. In this way, an event that objectively lasted 5 minutes can turn into a life sentence if you keep feeding it mentally day after day. This is why the Apostle Paul said, "Forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead," Philippians 3:13. This is not sentimental advice, but a psychological directive. Release the image and the emotion attached to it, and the past will cease to govern the present. I have worked with men and women who, not understanding this law, attributed their present failures to external causes: the economy, competition, bad luck. Upon closer inquiry, we discovered they were carrying inside a recurring movie of rejection, loss, or betrayal. One woman who came to me, unable to maintain a stable relationship, discovered that whenever a man showed genuine interest in her, the image of her father leaving home when she was 6 years old would rise in her mind. The face of that moment, his expression, the slamming door, all of it was alive in her subconscious, and every new bond was filtered through that lens. It was not the man of the present who was leaving. It was her memory being projected over and over again. When she understood this and deliberately replaced that scene with an image of reconciliation and affection, using the technique we will explain in the next chapter, her relationships began to flourish. You must understand that the subconscious is like fertile soil that does not distinguish between good seeds and bad. It will germinate everything you plant in it. A seed in this context is a mental image held with emotion. If that image is one of past defeat, the subconscious will tend to reproduce it in new circumstances. And it does so not out of malice, but out of perfect obedience. Its only function is to externalize what you imprint upon it. Thus, when you say to yourself, "I always get fired," and accompany that phrase with the memory of the time you were dismissed from a job, you are watering the same seed and strengthening its roots. Here is where mental science and biblical wisdom converge. The command to forget what lies behind does not mean ignoring the lessons learned, but withdrawing the emotional energy from the images that keep you bound. By doing so, you stop recreating the same pattern and open space for new experiences. If today your life feels like a repetition, it is because your inner projector is still running the same film. The solution is not to break the projector, you cannot destroy your subconscious mind, but to change the movie. I suggest an exercise in inner observation. Take a sheet of paper and write down 3 memories that still cause you pain or discomfort. Do not censor or minimize them. Describe them in enough detail that the emotion surfaces. Then identify what the predominant feeling is in each one. Is it fear, anger, sadness, shame? Recognizing the emotion associated with each memory is the first step in neutralizing its influence. The conscious mind, by shining attention upon these memories, begins to exercise authority over them, instead of allowing them to operate as hidden forces. This inventory will show you that what you are dragging along are not facts, but interpretations. The day you were dismissed, someone else might have felt relief, freedom, or anticipation. You felt injustice and rejection. The objective event was the same, but the subjective experience, which is what your subconscious recorded, was different. That is the true raw material your deeper mind works with, not the events, but the emotionally charged interpretations. Therefore, understanding that the past lives in images is not a mere philosophical reflection. It is the key to taking the helm of your mental life. As long as you believe you are carrying facts, you will feel powerless because you cannot turn back the calendar and change what happened. But when you realize you are carrying mental images that can be replaced, the door to freedom opens. Memory, like a dynamic archive, can be edited. What is imprinted on the subconscious can be overwritten with a new, more harmonious and constructive image. In the following chapters, I will show you how to perform this substitution effectively. For now, engrave this truth in your mind. Your present life is the faithful reflection of the images you keep alive in your deeper mind. If you want a different present, begin by examining the movies you are projecting, and be willing to change the programming. For as I often remind those who come to me, you do not live from your past, you live from the images you preserve of it. And those images, though they may have been inherited from painful experiences, can be transformed into sources of peace, strength, and renewal. Chapter 2. The Law of Substitution. The entire structure of your mental life rests upon a simple principle of unlimited reach. The subconscious does not eliminate by negation, but by replacement. This means that no image, however painful or unjust, will be erased from your inner archive merely because you decide not to think about it or order yourself to forget it. The deeper mind does not respond to emptiness, but to content. If you pull a seed from your garden and leave the hole unplanted, nature will not tolerate the void. It will fill it with weeds. That is how your subconscious operates. If you attempt to reject a negative memory without offering a redemptive image to take its place, the old pattern will return, sometimes disguised, but with the same essence. The law of substitution states that every image embedded in the subconscious can be transmuted by another image that embodies the opposite or healing meaning. This is not about falsifying history, but about reshaping its emotional structure so that the mind no longer associates that memory with pain, fear, or resentment, but with peace, understanding, or strength. Just as a chemist neutralizes an acid with a base, you neutralize a destructive memory with an image of opposite charge. This is not a matter of frivolous imagination, but a precise operation upon the creative reservoir of your life. Behold, I make all things new, Revelation 21:5, is not only an eschatological promise, but also a mental formula you can apply here and now to take what is old and worn and clothe it in a new form. When I receive people in consultation who carry particularly intense scenes, a public humiliation, an accident, a financial failure, I do not ask them to simply forget what happened. Instead, I guide them to re-enter the scene with their imagination, not as passive spectators, but as directors rewriting the script. Suppose you recall a moment when you were ridiculed at work. Close your eyes and visualize the same setting. The walls, the lighting, the voices. Now introduce an element of harmony. Imagine that instead of mockery, you receive words of recognition and support. Feel the warmth of that approval. Notice how your body relaxes. Sense the cordial tone of the voices. Hold that corrected version until the pleasant sensation replaces the original weight. This is the sensory visualization of the corrected event. The secret lies in sensory vividness. If, in recreating the scene, you limit yourself to mentally saying, "Everything went well," you will not achieve a deep impact. You must involve the senses, see colors and faces, hear the sounds, feel the temperature of the room, perceive even aromas if possible. The more complete the recreation, the more convincingly it will be accepted by your subconscious as the new truth of that moment. The subconscious does not discriminate between what was lived externally and what was vividly experienced internally. Both records are filed with equal authority. Scientific prayer of replacement is an essential tool in this process. It consists of formulating, with faith and concentration, a declaration that encapsulates the redemptive image and imprints it upon the subconscious. For example, in my mind this scene is clothed with peace and harmony. The hand of God has made it perfect, and so it remains. By repeating this prayer while holding the corrected image, you are combining word and vision, two channels of impression that reinforce one another. Repetition is not superstition. It is the mental equivalent of watering a freshly planted seed until it takes root. I have witnessed profound transformations when this principle is applied with perseverance. A businessman who had failed in his first venture lived trapped in the fear of investing again. When we reviewed the memory of his company's closure, we replaced the image of distressed employees and angry creditors with that of a voluntary closing, mutual gratitude and fulfilled agreements. We accompanied this image with the affirmation, "All my transactions are guided by divine wisdom and culminate in success and satisfaction for all involved." 3 months later, he partnered in a new project that flourished with ease, and he attributed his change of attitude to the exercise of substitution. Understand that this law does not work through mere optimism, but because the subconscious needs a mold for creative energy. If you provide it with a distorted mold, it will reproduce distortion. If you give it a harmonious mold, it will produce harmony. Substitution, then, is an act of supply. You are giving your mind the material it needs to generate the experience you desire. To pretend you can erase a memory by sheer willpower without placing something in its stead is like asking an architect to build a house without a blueprint. Practice this today. Choose a memory that burdens you and apply the formula. Relive the original scene in full detail. Introduce the changes that transform it into a satisfying experience. Fix that corrected image with a short positive prayer. Repeat the exercise daily until, when recalling the situation, the new version arises spontaneously. In this way, you will fulfill in your life the promise of revelation. The old things shall pass away, and all things shall be made new. When your subconscious adopts the new image, the original memory will lose its disturbing force. It will not disappear from the archive of your mind, but it will be stripped of the charge that kept it active. The scene, once a source of pain, will become a testimony of your ability to redeem and transform. This is the true meaning of substitution. Not to deny the shadow, but to illuminate it with such intense light that the shadow dissolves on its own. And in mastering this law, you will not only change your inner past, but also open the channel for a present and future aligned with the perfect image you now hold. Chapter 3. Reliving to correct. There is a moment in the day when your conscious mind becomes relaxed enough to allow impressions to penetrate directly into the creative storehouse of your subconscious, the minutes just before sleep. In this interval, inner dialogue slows down, rational defenses soften, and the flow of mental images becomes more pliable. This is the ideal ground for applying one of the most powerful techniques of inner transformation, the nightly review. Its foundation is simple, yet its effect can reshape both the oldest memories and the most recent events. It consists of mentally reliving an experience, whether from that very day or from years ago, and correcting it in your imagination until peace replaces disturbance. The nightly review takes advantage of an essential law. What you impress upon the subconscious before sleep is worked on during the hours of rest and tends to manifest with renewed strength in your outer life. If you go to bed rehearsing grievances, worries, or scenes of defeat, you are planting those images so they may germinate the next day. By contrast, if you conclude your day installing images of harmony and success, the subconscious will accept them as molds for its silent activity through the night. Sleeping is like handing over the ship of your life to the autopilot of the subconscious. It is wise to make sure the compass is set to the right destination before closing your eyes. Apply the technique by following these steps. Already in bed with the light off, select a specific event you want to correct. Do not choose several at once. Precision is more effective than dispersion. Evoke the scene as it actually occurred, the gestures, the words, the place. Begin deliberately modifying it, introducing the elements that would have turned it into a satisfying experience. If there was disagreement, imagine cordiality. If you received rejection, imagine acceptance. If you made a mistake, imagine yourself acting rightly. Feel the emotion corresponding to the corrected version: relief, gratitude, joy. Repeat the image until the sense of peace becomes dominant, and then fall asleep holding that last impression. The key is not merely to see the improved scene, but to feel it as authentic and final. Allow me to illustrate with the case of a merchant I once attended years ago. He had had a heated argument with a business partner over a mismanaged order. Harsh words were exchanged, and the tension was evident when they parted. That night, instead of mentally replaying the argument as he usually would, he decided to follow the instructions of the nightly review. He recreated the scene from the beginning, but this time imagined that both listened calmly, that the misunderstanding was clarified, and that they sealed their agreement with a handshake and a smile. He repeated this sequence several times until he fell asleep with a sense of relief. The next day, to his surprise, he received a call from his partner, proposing to resume negotiations and expressing a desire to work on better terms. Within a week, they signed a new agreement that blossomed into a fruitful alliance lasting years. The merchant always attributed this turning point to the nightly review. "It changed first in my mind, and then it changed in reality," he told me. Understand this. For the subconscious, time is not a fixed line. By modifying within yourself the image of a past event, you do not alter the objective fact, but you do alter the emotional imprint that accompanies it. And it is that imprint which determines how you react in similar situations in the present, and therefore directly influences your future results. It is like replacing a defective part in a mechanism. The entire system begins to function with greater precision. Moreover, By releasing the negative emotional charge, you open the door for the people and circumstances involved to respond in a more harmonious way, even if they are unaware of what you have done. To seal the work of review, I recommend using an affirmation that synthesizes the principle of perfection you wish to establish. What God creates in my mind remains perfect. Repeat it gently while visualizing the corrected scene until it becomes a natural expression of your feeling. This phrase is not a mere devotional adornment, it is a mental command affirming that the new, harmonious mold is the one imprinted in your subconscious. And once that mold is fixed, the creative energy flowing through you will reproduce it in your experience. The nightly review is not an isolated act, but a habit that, practiced consistently, cleans and reorganizes the archive of your memory. Over time, you will discover that you react with greater serenity to provocations, that tensions dissolve more quickly, and that your life increasingly reflects the images of harmony you cultivate before sleep. You may use this technique to heal a childhood memory, to transform an uncomfortable meeting, to rewrite a failure, or even to remake an entire day in your imagination. In every case, the mechanism is the same: relive in order to recreate. By adopting this practice, you cease to be a prisoner of your memories and become the conscious architect of your inner world. The night ceases to be a passive closure of activities and becomes a silent workshop where scenes are reconstructed, edges softened and perfect forms impressed upon the mind, forms that will inevitably seek expression in your waking life. Thus, day by day, your entire life becomes impregnated with that perfection which, as the affirmation declares, God has already created in your mind and which, by law, cannot be erased. Chapter 4. The Power of the Silent Word. There is a power that does not need to raise its voice or utter a single syllable to bring profound changes to the mind and to human relationships: the silent word. This power resides in mental prayer, not understood as automatic recitation, but as a deliberate act of communication between your consciousness and the creative principle that dwells deep within your being. The silent word is as effective as the spoken word, and even more so because it penetrates directly into the realm of the subconscious without interference from external noise or sensory distractions. It is a pure channel of mental impression that, when properly directed, can soften memories loaded with pain and dissolve bonds of resentment with those involved. When you recall an unpleasant episode, the mental image is usually associated with an emotional charge that involves not only the event itself, but also the people who participated in it. If those people are still alive, that negative bond can subtly influence your current interactions, even if contact is infrequent. And if they have passed from this world, the emotional bond remains active in your subconscious, accepting your peace and shaping your reactions toward others, who unconsciously remind you of them. The silent word offers a means to free both others and yourself from this invisible tie. The practice is simple, carried out in the calm of your inner self. Mentally evoke the person involved and repeat with clear intention: I bless you, I release you, and I release myself. Do not perform it mechanically. Imbue each word with real meaning. I bless you means you wish the highest good for that person unconditionally. I release you means you renounce demanding repair, explanation, or acknowledgement for the harm you perceived. I release myself means you remove yourself from the mental pressure you have built around that memory. This triple declaration breaks the emotional feedback loop that keeps the wound alive. Jesus gave the supreme example of this attitude when, on the cross, he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Luke 23:34. This was not a gesture of weakness, but the highest expression of mental and spiritual power. By blessing those who harmed him, he broke the chain of resentment and freed his mind to fulfill his purpose. Notice that he did not demand punishment, nor require prior repentance. He simply released, with the authority of his silent word, every bond that could contaminate his soul. In this sense, whenever you mentally bless someone who has been part of your painful scene, you are following a principle proven effective for thousands of years. A businessman I knew applied this practice with astonishing results. He had been wronged by a partner, leaving him in a precarious financial situation. For months, he nourished thoughts of revenge, mentally replaying the betrayal. One day, he decided to apply the silent word. Whenever the memory arose, instead of reliving anger, he closed his eyes and repeated, "I bless you, I release you, and I release myself." Within a few weeks, he noticed the emotional charge diminish. Shortly after, he received an unexpected offer to participate in a new project that not only recovered his losses, but also provided higher income than before. He acknowledged that this favorable turn was possible because he had stopped spending mental energy sustaining the wound and had freed space to receive something better. Make this practice a daily exercise, not only for past events, but also to counteract recent frictions. Before sleep, mentally review any interaction of the day that left tension and apply the phrase, "I bless you, I release you, and I release myself." Repeat it until you feel the tension loosen and the image of the person fade into a frame of peace. Over time, you will discover that your mind becomes less reactive, your mood steadier, and your relationships simpler, because you no longer carry the unconscious need to settle scores. Remember, the silent word does not work by arbitrary magic, but by the mental law of impression. What you affirm with conviction within yourself is impressed upon the subconscious and begins to manifest in external experience. When you bless in silence, you are planting in your mind the seed of harmony, and like any seed, it will germinate as cleaner relationships, pacified memories, and a growing sense of inner freedom. Adopt this attitude today. Let no mental image of a person associated with pain occupy space in your mind without serving the light of blessing. In this way, the silent word becomes a constructive habit, a constant current that cleanses and renews the archive of your memory. Because each time you mentally say, "I bless you, I release you, and I release myself," you reaffirm that your mind belongs to God, and what God creates there is peace, not resentment. Chapter 5. Forgive to prosper. Forgiveness is one of the most practical and at the same time least understood laws of the mind and spirit. Many confuse it with passive sweetness, as if forgiving meant approving or minimizing the wrongdoing. In reality, forgiveness is not about justifying the error. It is about freeing your own mind from the burden that the error, or the memory of it, keeps alive. The act of forgiving does not necessarily change the other person. It changes the mental state of the one who forgives. And that inner change is what restores the normal flow of goods and opportunities into an individual's life. The past, when retained, especially in the form of resentment, is like an invisible dam in the flow of prosperity. Mental images of injustice, betrayal, or abuse consume creative energy that should be available for new ideas, contacts, and projects. Just as a machine cannot function efficiently if its parts are stuck, the mind cannot attract and retain benefits if part of its energy is immobilized in old battles. Lack of forgiveness not only disturbs inner peace, it blocks external channels of provision because the subconscious reproduces internal tension as obstacles and losses. I have seen countless examples of business people who, upon releasing deep resentment, experienced an immediate breakthrough in their affairs. I remember a contractor who had lost a bid, which he considered a corrupt act by his competitors. For 2 years, he avoided any dealings with the people involved and spoke of them with bitterness. When I explained that his lack of forgiveness kept that scene active in his subconscious, he realized that although the event itself could not be erased, its inner impact could be dissolved. He began practicing a simple prayer before any business endeavor. God in me sees perfection in you and in me. He repeated it each time he thought of his competitors, imagining that the entire past transaction was surrounded by light and balance. In less than a month, he received a call for a contract larger than the previous one from a company entirely new to him. It was as if a gate had opened, he told me. Another similar case involved a woman who ran a design firm. She had had a serious disagreement with an important client, which led to the cancellation of several projects. She held on to resentment, and although she gained new clients, her revenue dropped and seemed unable to recover. She decided to apply the same formula, mentally bless the person involved and affirm the presence of God as perfection in both of them. She also adopted a daily habit of reading the Lord's Prayer, pausing consciously at the phrase, "Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us." She did not recite it mechanically, but used it as an exercise in mental adjustment, recognizing that the extent to which she freed others was the extent to which she herself became free. 3 weeks later, she received an unexpected referral from a distant contact that opened the door to an international contract. She acknowledged that the only new variable had been her heartfelt decision to forgive. The power of this law is easy to understand. The subconscious works with the raw material you provide. If that material is charged with resentment, it will create equivalent forms of conflict and loss. If it is imbued with forgiveness, it will produce equivalent forms of harmony and provision. There is no middle ground. That is why, whenever you remember someone with resentment, you should ask yourself, is it worth holding on to this image if it costs me my peace and prosperity? The answer is always no. Practice the prayer of forgiveness until it becomes a natural response, not only for old wounds but also for recent conflicts. When you feel someone has treated you unfairly, pause, breathe, and affirm, God in me sees perfection in you and in me. Do not wait for the emotion to pass on its own. Act immediately to neutralize it. By doing so, you not only cleanse the record in your subconscious, but also prevent the negative image from taking root and bearing bitter fruit. When Jesus taught the Lord's Prayer, he placed forgiveness at the heart of the model prayer. This was no coincidence. He understood that no relationship with God, and therefore no relationship with good, could flow freely if unresolved accounts lingered in the mind of the prayer. The phrase, "Forgive us as we forgive," is a mental equation. What we give in terms of release is exactly what we receive. Each time you pronounce that part of the prayer, you are dictating the conditions under which you wish to be treated by the law of life. Adopt this attitude as both a business and personal principle. Your prosperity depends not only on technical skill or economic conditions, but also on the cleanliness of your inner world. Forgiving does not make you weak. It restores your strength. It does not erase memory of what happened. It dissolves the emotional wound that kept you bound, and above all, restores the flow of goods that was always available to you, but blocked by the invisible wall of resentment. Each time you recall a grievance, transform that moment into an opportunity to plant freedom. Use the phrase, "Read the Lord's Prayer consciously," and plant in your subconscious the perfect image of harmony with all. You will discover that the act of forgiving not only heals your heart, but also opens wide the gates of your prosperity. In the realm of the mind, abundance and resentment cannot coexist. One flourishes only when the other has been uprooted. Chapter 6. Redeeming Childhood. Much of the limitations and adult experiences do not originate in the present, but from a set of beliefs, judgments, and phrases heard during the early years of life. The child's mind, still lacking critical filters, accepts almost any impression as absolute truth. These early impressions, coming from parents, teachers, relatives, or even casual observations, become engraved in the subconscious as silent decrees that continue to operate decades later. For example, a child who repeatedly heard "you're clumsy" or "money is hard to get" may reach adulthood carrying patterns of insecurity or scarcity that do not reflect current reality, but rather an unquestioned past programming. Understand that from the perspective of mental law, the past is not closed. The child you once were continues to exist as a living figure in your subconscious, acting as a receiver and repeater of those first instructions. If those instructions were limiting, your task now as a conscious adult is to adopt that inner child and give it new commands. This is not a sentimental exercise. It is a direct intervention on the cause of many of your current results. You cannot change the external circumstances of your childhood, but you can redeem the internal image left behind, replacing limiting messages with encouragement, security, and self-love. To begin, find a moment of stillness. Close your eyes and visualize yourself at the age when you believe you received one of these negative impressions. Do not settle for a vague memory. See yourself with the hairstyle, clothing, and environment characteristic of that stage. Observe the expression on your face. Then, approach in your imagination as a protective adult would. Kneel if necessary and look into the child's eyes. Speak firmly and lovingly the words you would have needed to hear at that moment. You are valuable, you are capable. God guides and provides for you always. Nothing is lacking in your life. Repeat this dialogue several times until you sense the child responding with relief, a smile, or a shift in posture. This scene is more than a symbol. It is a re-imprinting that, if sustained consistently, modifies the internal commands your subconscious executes. The biblical passage in which Jesus declares, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these," Mark 10:14, perfectly illustrates this principle. Children represent the purity of a receptive mind, the ability to accept spiritual truth without resistance. Redeeming your childhood from a mental perspective is restoring that openness in your subconscious, but now with correct and constructive instructions. By allowing the child within you to approach the presence of God, you free it from the limiting decrees that distanced you from your full expression. I have witnessed remarkable transformations when this practice is performed sincerely. A 40-year-old man with a history of financial failures recognized that as a child, he had constantly heard that money corrupts and only the dishonest prosper. Although he consciously rejected those phrases as an adult, his subconscious still acted according to them, blocking any economic progress. For a month, he practiced nightly visualizations of himself at age 7, receiving encouragement from his adult self about the value of his work and the goodness of money as a means of service. Soon after, he accepted a job opportunity he would previously have rejected out of fear, and in less than a year, he doubled his income. He acknowledged that the decisive factor was re-educating his inner child. The self-acceptance routine I recommend in this process is as follows. Each morning, look at yourself in the mirror and slowly affirm aloud, "I fully accept myself. The past has no power over me. God in me made me perfect, and this is how I see myself, treat myself, and live." This declaration is not meant to convince others, but to establish in your own mind the foundation of a new relationship with yourself. By accepting yourself, you stop unconsciously repeating the role others assigned to you in childhood and begin acting from the identity God gave you, capable, worthy, and whole. Remember, your inner child does not disappear with the years. It continues to influence your emotions and decisions. By redeeming it, you not only offer that child the care and guidance it may not have received, but also liberate your adult self from patterns that no longer serve you. And when the inner child is restored to its original purity, your outer life reflects that restoration in the form of greater confidence, healthier relationships, and a renewed sense of purpose. Ultimately, redeeming childhood is giving your mind permission to be happy, to prosper, and to live fully. Chapter 7. The Mental File of the Future. Just as your past lives in images stored in the subconscious, your future already exists in the form of mental projections that you have planted, consciously or unconsciously. The future is not a blank page waiting to be written by chance. It is a living file composed of mental scenes in gestation, ready to manifest when conditions are favorable. Every thought held with emotion, every image repeated with conviction, every word spoken with faith or fear is a seed deposited in that file. The subconscious, which does not understand past or future as the clock does, treats these seeds as present realities and nurtures them until you encounter them in your external experience. Most people allow their mental file of the future to fill with unintended images, worries, imagined disasters, projected failures, and anticipated negative conversations. Not understanding that these representations are creative molds, they repeatedly play in their minds the fears they most want to avoid, unaware that this repetition is precisely what strengthens the likelihood of their occurrence. In contrast, the trained mind knows that the future is the most fertile ground there is, because in it, everything is still malleable. Like any fertile soil, it produces in the measure it is intentionally sown. Deliberately creating future scenes is both an art and a science. The art consists of forming images clear and appealing enough that you take pleasure in holding them. The science consists of embedding them with sensory detail and congruent emotion so that the subconscious registers them as if they have already occurred. Suppose you wish to receive a promotion at work. Do not limit yourself to thinking, "I want a promotion," as an abstract phrase. Visualize the scene. You are in your superior's office, hearing words of congratulations, shaking hands, feeling the firm grip. Notice the light in the room, the sound of the voice, the texture of the furniture, even the scent of the environment. Then, hold the emotion of gratitude and accomplishment as if you are living the moment. This combination of vision and emotion is the key that opens the mental file of the future and fills it with the desired seed. I recall the case of a student who shared his experience with this technique. Years before his university graduation, he decided to visualize the day he would receive his diploma. Every night before sleep, he imagined himself walking onto the stage, receiving the diploma, hearing his parents applaud, and seeing the smiling faces of his classmates. He added details: the weight of the paper in his hands, the warmth of the lights, the sound of his name pronounced clearly. He practiced this with such consistency that when the real day arrived, he told me the scene was identical to his visualization, even in small details he had not consciously planned. According to him, living it first in his mind gave him such confidence that the final exam, which had previously intimidated him, was completed with total serenity. This practice should always be accompanied by a planting prayer. The one I recommend is brief, clear, and powerful. Thank you, Father, because this is already a fact. When you say it, you are not asking for something to happen in the future. You are affirming that it has already been created on the mental plane, and that, by law, it will manifest in the physical plane. This anticipatory gratitude is not self-deception. It is a conscious acknowledgement that the creative act has already been fulfilled in the mind, which is where all experience begins. It is important to understand that the mental file of the future is not filled merely with superficial desires, but with images supported by deep conviction. If you introduce doubts, fear that it will not happen, or contradictory thoughts during visualization, those interferences are recorded along with the image and delay or distort the manifestation. Therefore, when creating a future scene, take the time to clear your mind of resistance, focusing solely on the final desired version. Practice this daily. Choose a goal and transform it into a complete scene with images, sounds, physical sensations, and coherent emotion. Place it in your mental file of the future, repeating it each night, always accompanied by the prayer, "Thank you, Father, because this is already a fact." Do not try to force the how, because those details belong to the domain of the law, which will orchestrate the circumstances. Your task is to keep the mold you have deposited clean and clear. Over time, you will begin to notice coincidences, opportunities, and signs pointing to the realization of your scene. It is then that you will understand that the future, that once seemed uncertain, is merely the natural harvest of the seeds you have planted in the invisible field of your mind. And as you master this process, you will discover that you no longer need to wait to see what happens, because with each deliberate image, you are already writing the life you will live. Chapter 8, Letter to Tomorrow. Writing to your future self is one of the most direct and tangible ways to plant in the subconscious the images you wish to harvest. This is not merely an exercise in personal motivation, but a deliberate act of faith that fixes in writing the mental mold to be materialized. When you write a letter to your own tomorrow, you are acting as an architect, handing the builder, your subconscious, a detailed blueprint of what you want to see constructed in your life. The power of this method lies in the fact that written language, when combined with emotion and visualization, produces a deeper and more stable impression than fleeting thoughts. The basis of this practice comes from the principle God revealed through the prophet. Write the vision and make it plain on tablets, that he may run who reads it. Though it may tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not delay. Habakkuk 2:2-3. In terms of mental law, writing the vision means extracting it from the undefined flow of thoughts and giving it a definite form that can be contemplated and repeated. Declaring it on tablets means fixing it on a durable medium, in this case paper, so it serves as a reminder and guide. Waiting for it means maintaining faith and consistency without wavering in the absence of immediate results. The prophetic letter method unfolds as follows. First, choose a future date, specific and reasonable, by which you expect to see your vision fulfilled. Do not settle for a vague timeline. Precision helps the mind organize its creative energy. Second, begin the letter as if you are already in that future moment, writing in the present tense. For example, today is September 15th, 2026, and I am deeply grateful for... Third, describe in detail the achievements, changes, or blessings you desire, but as if they are already accomplished. Include sensory details, emotions, and circumstances. Do not write, "I hope to have my house." Instead, write, I live in my new home with bright walls, wide windows, and a garden I care for every morning. The tone of the letter should be one of gratitude, not request. The subconscious responds more quickly to the affirmation of an already established reality than to a plea for something uncertain. By expressing gratitude, you act as if what you desire is already in your possession, which is exactly what mental law requires to activate its manifestation. I knew a businessman who used this method to project the opening of a branch of his company. He dated his letter a year ahead, describing the location, the team, the satisfaction of his clients, and his own joy seeing operations running. He read his letter once a month with calm focus. The result? On the planned date, he inaugurated the branch exactly as described, even including details he had not consciously planned, but that were present in his letter. Once written, the letter should be kept in a safe place, not to forget it, but to reinforce it periodically. I recommend reading it once a month, preferably in a calm state, so that each reading waters the seed. Daily reading is unnecessary. The goal is not to obsess over the outcome, but to keep it fresh and alive in the mind without forcing it. Between readings, trust that the subconscious and the laws of life are quietly working to bring that image into physical experience. This method works because it combines three powerful elements: the written word, which fixes the idea, sensory visualization, which gives it life, and the emotion of gratitude, which seals the conviction. By uniting them, you produce within yourself a state of certainty that admits no contradiction. That state, maintained consistently, is the creative force that shapes external circumstances. Practice today. Take a sheet of paper, choose a future date, and write to your future self, describing the life you want to find when you arrive there. Do it with the detail and sincerity of someone recounting a lived experience. Keep the letter and read it each month as if opening a window to check that the desired landscape remains intact on your inner horizon. If you do this, the day will come when you read this letter not as prophecy, but as a diary, because everything it contains will be part of your present. By writing to tomorrow, you are not only projecting your future, you are giving instructions to your present mind to move in the direction of that vision. And as the scripture promises, though it may tarry, it will surely come, for the moment you write it with faith, it has already begun to exist. Chapter 9. Sowing in Joy. In every law of life, the quality of the seed and the richness of the soil determine the type and abundance of the harvest. But there is one element that in the field of the mind is just as influential as the seed itself: the emotion with which it is sown. You can form the clearest and most detailed image of your desire, but if it is deposited in the subconscious with a state of apathy, anxiety, or distrust, that image will lack the strength needed to attract its corresponding manifestation. On the other hand, if the sowing is infused with joy, with a sense of gratitude and anticipated delight, that vibration becomes the invisible nourishment that feeds the seed until it matures. Joy is not a mere emotional decoration. It is a signal to the subconscious that the planted image is safe, desirable, and aligned with your well-being. The deep mind responds to emotion like a natural fertilizer. The science of suggestion has shown that the factor that most influences the imprinting of an idea is not its logical content, but the intensity of the emotion accompanying it. Thus, two people may affirm the same phrase, "I am prospering," but if one does so with genuine joy and the other with skepticism, the outcome will be radically different. Cultivating joy when imagining the result is a conscious exercise. It is not about waiting for circumstances to bring happiness so you can feel it. It is about deliberately generating it as part of the creative act. Imagine, for example, that you are envisioning a new home. Do not limit yourself to seeing its walls or furniture. Hear the laughter that will echo there. Feel the warmth of gatherings. Smell the aroma of the meals you will prepare. And above all, experience now the gratitude of knowing that this home already exists in the mental plane and that its manifestation is inevitable. This anticipated joy is the signal the subconscious needs to work without interference. A powerful tool to intensify this sowing in joy is expressed gratitude. When you give thanks aloud, you engage not only the mind, but also the body, reinforcing the sense of certainty. Dedicate a few minutes each day to give thanks for what you are sowing, as if you already possess it. Say, for example, Thank you, Father, for my perfect health, for my harmonious relationships, for my abundant prosperity. Speak with a firm voice and a celebratory tone, avoiding a pleading manner. What you thank for with joy becomes fixed in your mental archive as a completed fact. Psalm 100, in this sense, is a hymn of joyful sowing. Serve the Lord with gladness, come before his presence with singing. Enter his gates with thanksgiving, and his courts with praise. Give thanks, bless his name. In terms of mental law, these words remind us that the correct attitude when approaching the source of all good is joyful gratitude, not complaint or fear. Just as the confident, smiling farmer knows the earth will fulfill its cycle, you, when sowing in joy, know that the creative law never fails. I have seen extraordinary results in people who apply this principle. A merchant going through a difficult period decided, instead of lamenting his low sales, to begin each day giving thanks aloud for the abundant sales already on their way. He did this with such enthusiasm that his employees began to catch that spirit. Within weeks, the figures improved noticeably. As he confessed to me, "It wasn't that the situation changed to give me joy, it was that my joy changed the situation." Adopt this habit. Every time you plant an image in your mind, dress it with the emotion of joy. Do not wait for external signs to feel happy. Decide that joy is part of the creative act. Sow with sadness, reap meagerly. Sow with joy, reap abundantly. And remember, joy is not a reaction to the result. It is an affirmation that the result is already a fact in the invisible plane. Thus, with each mental seed planted in the fertile soil of joy, you ensure a harvest that will not only fulfill your desire, but also enrich your experience in the process. In the realm of the mind, joy is not a reward at the end of the path. It is the energy that flows from beginning to end, guaranteeing that the fruit is of the same quality as the seed. Chapter 10. Sealing the Future. One of the most common mistakes made by those who work with the laws of the mind is mentally unearthing the seed they have planted. After forming a clear image of their desire, infusing it with emotion and gratitude, and depositing it in the subconscious, they return again and again to examine it with doubt. Will it work? And if it doesn't, should I change the image? This habit is like a farmer who, after sowing, digs up the soil every day to check if the seed is germinating. Such behavior interrupts the natural process, weakens the root, and in many cases prevents the fruit from reaching maturity. Sealing the future means closing the creative act with a brief, confident, and definitive statement that acts as a mental seal, preventing doubt, anxiety, or fear from penetrating the seed. This seal is an instruction to the subconscious. The creation is complete on its invisible plane and, by law, will manifest in the visible. From that moment on, your task is not to monitor the seed, but to maintain a state of calm expectancy, like someone who knows the law is faithful. The sealing technique works as follows. Once you have formed your image and felt the corresponding emotion, pronounce a short affirmation, such as, "It is done, thank you, Father," or "It is fulfilled." Repeat it once more with conviction and then let it go. There is no need to add explanations or arguments. The power lies in simplicity and certainty. Whenever doubt tries to creep in, do not get entangled in defensive reasoning. Simply repeat your seal and shift your focus. This is like closing the door of your house. You do not need to watch it all night. You know it is closed. Remember the story of a farmer from California who shared his work philosophy with me. Before planting his crops, he would walk the fields and pray, "Father, this seed is in your hands. The result is already on its way." Then he would cover the soil and never disturb it to check if it was sprouting. He said, "The earth knows how to do its work. If I interfere, I would damage the root. My task is to tend, care, and wait." This is the same attitude we must adopt with mental seeds. Seal them with prayer and allow the creative law to work silently. Jesus taught this principle clearly in Mark 11:24. "Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours." Notice the order. First ask, form the image, then believe, seal with certainty. Finally receive, see the manifestation. There is no place in this sequence for doubt or manipulation of the process. To believe is to close the case, declaring it resolved without the need to check again. Those who do not seal their future remain exposed to mental interference. Each thought of uncertainty is like opening a hole in the soil, allowing moisture to escape and weakening the root. In contrast, those who seal with certainty create a protected mental field where the seed can develop until it visibly sprouts. Apply this principle to every project. If you have sown the image of a home, a job, a relationship, or a personal goal, seal it with your affirmation and remain at peace. Do not be swayed by conversations that contradict your vision or by news that sows fear. Your seal is your safeguard, and just as the farmer harvests in his time, you will see at the right moment the perfect fruit of what you have sown. Because a mental seed, once sealed with faith, has the support of a law that cannot fail. Chapter 11. Signs of the Harvest. In working with the law of the mind, many people make the mistake of expecting change to appear suddenly and fully, overlooking that, in most cases, manifestation first announces itself through small signs, almost imperceptible to those who are not attentive. Just as in the field, the first ears of grain do not appear overnight. The earth shows green shoots first. Similarly, in life, the results of our mental sowing often come in the form of hints, coincidences, and partial progress. Recognizing these signs is not only a reason for gratitude, but also an act that strengthens faith, because it confirms that the law is working and that the process is moving towards the full harvest. These indications can appear as unexpected contacts, new ideas, doors opening in areas related to what you have sown, or even changes in your own attitude and way of responding to circumstances. Many call them coincidences or chance, but those who understand the law know that they are the first fruits, signaling the maturity of the sowing. Do not disregard the small. Often it is the clearest sign that something great is on its way. I recommend keeping a first fruits journal. This is a notebook or file where you record every event, no matter how small, that relates to the mental image you have planted. If you are working toward a new job, note every conversation, offer, meeting, or referral that comes your way. If you are sowing for healing, record every improvement in your well-being, every word of encouragement received, every new habit you adopt. This practice is neither superstitious nor repetitive. It is a way to maintain focus on the harvest development and to accumulate tangible evidence that your sowing is bearing fruit. I remember the case of a couple who had been searching for the right home for years. After applying the principles of mental sowing, they began noticing changes. A friend told them about a neighborhood they didn't know. They found listings with more affordable prices, and a real estate agent called to show properties matching their description. They decided to record each of these signs in their journal. Although initially just small openings, every entry gave them greater confidence. Within a few months, they found the exact house they had visualized and recognized that all those coincidences had been precise steps toward that outcome. Psalm 126 beautifully expresses this principle. Those who sowed with tears will reap with joy. The one who goes out weeping, carrying the precious seed, will return rejoicing, bringing their sheaves with them. This scripture speaks not only of the final harvest, but also of the certainty that should accompany the entire process. Tears may represent initial difficulties or the effort required, but the joy of harvesting is the sure fruit of persevering sowing. When you recognize the signs of your harvest, give thanks as if it were already the full result. This gratitude is not self-deception, but a way to reinforce in the subconscious the idea that the law is working correctly. By doing so, you align yourself with the rhythm of manifestation and avoid falling into impatience or doubt. Remember, the harvest begins long before you see the field full. It begins with the first shoots, in the details that confirm life is responding to your sowing. Keep your eyes open and your heart grateful. Record every first fruit, celebrate it, and let that celebration serve as the fertilizer that accelerates the maturity of all you have sown. For those who recognize the small sign as a promise of the great are already prepared to receive the fullness of their harvest. Chapter 12. Live in the eternal present. Throughout these pages, we have learned to work with images of the past to redeem them, and with images of the future to sow them. We have seen how the mind can correct old scenes and how it can create future ones in detail. However, all this work, valuable as it may be, rests on a deeper foundation, the ability to live in the present moment. The reason is simple. Neither the past nor the future has independent existence outside of current consciousness. The past survives in the form of memories and emotions that you are reliving now, and the future is formed from images that you project now. Thus, the present is not just another point on the timeline, it is the only point from which life can be experienced and transformed. Living in the eternal present means recognizing that all of God's life is right here, lacking nothing. This is not an abstract theory, it is a cherished experience. When your mind stops wandering between what was and what will be, you open yourself to a peace that does not depend on external circumstances. In this state, you realize that the power to correct the past and sow the future is nowhere else but in the consciousness you hold now. The present moment is like the fulcrum that allows you to move the entire lever of time. If you occupy it fully, you can influence both what you remember and what you project. An essential practice for anchoring yourself in this awareness is presence meditation. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, and bring your attention to your breath. With each inhalation, mentally affirm, God is here. With each exhalation, affirm, God is now. Do not try to force positive thoughts or suppress negative ones. Simply keep your attention on the fact that God's presence surrounds and penetrates you in this instant. As the mind quiets, this affirmation ceases to be a phrase and becomes a living perception. This practice is grounded in the words revealed to Moses, I am who I am, Exodus 3:14. This I am is not conjugated in the past or future. It is pure presence. When you affirm I am, you are not describing a limited identity, but recognizing that you share the same eternal life as God. In this recognition, your past loses its power to condemn you, and your future ceases to be a source of anxiety. You rest in the fact that the I am contains all good here and now. Living in the eternal present does not mean neglecting the past or future, but approaching them from the solidity of the now. You can work with revisiting memories or sowing future scenes, but always from the calm assurance that the only real moment is the present. Thus, the past does not drag you down with guilt, and the future does not push you with fear. You move freely in both directions because you are rooted in the peace of the now. To conclude this chapter of learning, I offer an integrative prayer that unifies the three dimensions of time into a single experience of wholeness. In God, my past is redeemed, my present is perfect, my future is secure. Repeat it upon waking and before sleeping, not as a mechanical formula, but as a conscious declaration of truth. By doing so, you will feel the tension that usually fragments your attention dissolve, and a current of peace, order, and trust begin to flow through everything you do. When you live in the eternal present, you do not fear tomorrow, nor lament yesterday. You recognize that all power, guidance, and provision are here and now, in the presence that never departs. And by remaining in this state, you discover that you have not only learned to manage the past and future, but have found the immovable center from which your entire life expands in harmony. For in God's eternal present, nothing is lacking, nothing is in excess, and everything is.